Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I'm co-founder and managing partner of Financing Solutions. Financing Solutions is a leading provider of lines of credit to nonprofits. Our line of credit program is easy, inexpensive, and costs nothing to use, making it a great cash backup plan for your nonprofit. If you'd like to learn more about the program, please visit us at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And if you decide to apply today, we will even give you $250 credit on file, or feel free to give us a call at 862-207-4118. Just remember, the time to set up your line of credit is today, not when you actually have the emergency come up. Today, I am really excited to be speaking with Pam Sherman from the Sherman Edge. Pam is an attorney, actor, and leadership consultant, and was profiled in People magazine about her career transition from attorney to actor. Today, Pam is a keynote speaker, conducts programs, and coaches leaders in leadership, development, and communication. She has consulted with nonprofits, Fortune 500 companies, law firms, advertising agencies, nonprofits, and is a highly rated resource internationally for a variety of leadership groups, including Vistage, the Young Presidents Organization, and the Entrepreneur Organization. She has also been an adjunct professor in arts management and a guest lecturer at the Kellogg School of Business at American University, among others. Her nationally syndicated column, The Suburban Outlaw, appeared on the USA Today network. Pam, welcome to today's Nonprofit MBA podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I love this because I don't have an MBA. So I'm really excited to can I earn a degree when we're finished? That would be amazing.
Well, I actually do two podcasts. They're both, one's called the Nonprofit MBA podcast. The other one's called the Entrepreneur MBA podcast. And, the thing that I've built, a number of companies over a period of 25 years. And the thing that that you learn about both entrepreneurship and running a nonprofit, it's that it is, and I'll use the term that I learned from a friend, autodidactic, which means self-taught.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because especially as you're starting from nothing or you have an idea that you have to problem solve, I never see a difference between, I get it. It's, one is registered under a different legal structure, may have a different mission, but both start with a dream in many ways, right? If you think about it. So I think it's brilliant. And so many nonprofits can benefit from entrepreneurial thinking, and so many entrepreneurs might benefit from being more mission driven, don't you think?
I think you said the magic word right there, and that is, mission driven. I think, with entrepreneurs, you're trying to help them understand that if they can come up with a mission driven organization outside of making money,
right,
then that's a powerful statement. And whereas with nonprofits, it's almost built in very well that
right,
they lead with the idea that we have a mission. All you have to do is help define that mission, so to speak. And I think that works really well. We were talking about autodidactic, self-taught, and I think that works really well into today's topic that we're going to talk about, and that is why leadership and storytelling are critical to grow your nonprofit, because that is, when it comes to leadership, it comes to storytelling, which are big parts of running a nonprofit, even more so than a business. Teaching yourself and realizing your leadership qualities and what your story is,
right,
is something that you have to self-discover yourself. Would you agree?
I would agree. And it's so interesting. I was just asked this question recently. How did you come to to become a leadership consultant? Because I don't have a typical path. I started out my career as an attorney, working in banking, securities, and employment law. But I'd always had a dream of being an actor, talk about a nonprofit world. And when my law firm went out of business, I took a leap and became a full-time working actor in Washington, D.C. And after getting a call from People magazine, who was doing a story about people who ditched their day jobs to pursue their dreams, I got a phone call, and it was from the head of training at the Antitrust Division of the Department of Justice. And the memory of the story is that she said to me, "Can you help me make my lawyers more interesting?" Maybe she didn't say exactly that, but I started thinking about it, and it really took me on this path of how can I combine my right and left brains, the process-oriented lawyer with the ability to be creative and recognize that, a great lawyer's job, if you think about it, is to convince whoever they have to convince, judge or jury, that their story is the one that works, right, with the facts and the law. And a great lawyer has to consider that the storyteller matters. The same thing in leadership in a nonprofit. You have to convince funders to fund you, board members to join you, those that you serve to allow you to serve them, and you can't forget that the leadership of the organization is yes, often that they are tied to the mission, but the messenger matters, and so that work has allowed me to work with nonprofits and business leaders, and frankly, I don't care what you do. I'm more concerned with how you show up in the world. And that is my path, which was
Yeah.
essentially combining both sides of the work that I'd done in the past. I like to say, I used to tell bankers what not to say, and now I tell them how to say it. But in the nonprofit world,
Yeah.
it's, yeah, everybody's a great storyteller, but are you really showing up in the right way so that your story impacts your audience and makes a difference for them? That's critical.
Yeah.
So, and it's all, I
Yeah.
suppose,
Yeah. What do
self-taught.
you, yeah. So let's take an example where you get a call from someone that says, "Hey, I'm really struggling as a leader.
Hmm.
With it could be a nonprofit, could be a business. I mean, tell me how does where do you go in the beginning with that?"
So it's so interesting because often, we need others to tell us that we're struggling, right? You don't get a lot of people I wish they would, because it is the self identifiers who ultimately are the most successful in leadership coaching and going on the journey of self awareness required of a leader. Too often it's obstacles that are met with our team just isn't gelling. We're not able to get the funding that we're looking for. We need to have a better story as an organization, or our board members, they're sitting there, but they're just not invested. How do we get them excited and integrated into our story? So, first, I think you have to identify the need, because listen, nothing I teach isn't something that certainly nonprofit leaders don't already know. They know that telling a great story is going to open up a funder's pocket, or they know that telling a great story about success in their nonprofit of what they've done in their area of expertise is going to illuminate their work in the world. But when it comes to themselves, they often don't. I don't have time. I'm busy doing the doing. So the first step is to recognize that, how could I amplify my organization? It starts with you as the leader. So can I share my definition of leadership, because I think it might
Yeah, please.
help.
Yeah.
So this, actually telling a story, sat on my husband's first boss's credenza. That's how old we are. They had credenzas, in the back, and a credenza. It had a plaque on it, and I was in my first year of law school. And I don't know why this stuck with me. My husband came home from work. He was in marketing and product management, and he said this plaque was there, and it said what leadership is. And it's stuck with me to this day. It's leadership is the ability to communicate a vision and gain commitment to it. So think about that. Leadership isn't hierarchical. It's not about where you sit in the organization. It's not leadership with a big L, right? I'm the leader and you're not. It's based on behavior, action, vision, and emotionally connected followers. There is
Mm.
no better tool to understanding. Then you move into your leadership presence, which is the ability to connect to an audience, to their thoughts and feelings in order to move them to do something. And then you move into, well, what are the tools that are going to help me do that? I have to know who I am. I have to know who my audience is. And I have to know what stories I can tell to get that emotional connection. And,
Mm.
the beauty of what I do now is that there's all this science to back it up. So if there's somebody who says, show me, I don't really, yeah, storytelling. I know how to tell a story. And then they, show me their 150 slides with data all over it. I'm like, that doesn't look like a story to me. That looks like an explanation, a data dump. But where's the way that your emotionally committed followers would want to follow you, or open up their pocketbooks? So that definition of leadership has formed everything I've done since then, and really is at the start of the work that I get to do with leaders.
Do you think it's harder to train somebody in leadership skills and storytelling when they're an introvert or when they're an
Mm.
extrovert and they think they know it all?
So the answer would be yes. I just love, there's a great book called Quiet, by Susan Cain, which I'm sure you've heard of, called The Power of an Introvert in a World That Won't Stop Talking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And she actually has the Quiet Leadership Institute. I'm a huge fan. And I really always, I'm clear to all of my introverts in the room, that this isn't about being an introvert. Introvert is how you take your energy, right? I get my energy. That doesn't mean you can't be a great storyteller and that you can't use your voice. I hate the term find your voice. We all have a voice. We have to use our voice to meet our mission, right? To live our purpose, to help our organization meet its mission. An introvert is going to do that in their wonderful, unique, personal way. The extrovert who feels they know everything, I grant them that they do. That really helps. Yes, of course, you are the extrovert. You're the delightful storyteller at a party, and everybody wants to listen to you. But is that the kind of story that's going to capture somebody's attention? And again, commitment is and you don't want just followership. You want committed followers. You want those who are going
Mm.
to go on the whole journey with you, especially in a nonprofit where you want them to be with you, the life of a funder. You want that philanthropist to be committed to you for a good long time, right? You don't want to bring them in just for the gala and then, get them to raise their paddle. You want them to go beyond the paddle raise to say, how can I help? How can I get involved, right? So that extrovert needs to deepen their connection to their personal story as well as to the organization story. Good question. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, I think that the thing that I noticed about myself, you know, over over a 25 plus year career, I really think that leadership is learned. I think no, I don't think the adage that is, well, he's a great leader. You might start off at maybe a little bit of a a little bit of an advantage over other someone else. But I think I think we all have to learn how to be leaders,
Yes.
no matter where you're coming from. I was thinking this as you were talking about extroverts. I think an extrovert, which I happen to be an extrovert, maybe comes to the question of improving their leadership when they have something really bad happen. They said the wrong thing. They're too assertive, too aggressive, those type of things. I know, back when I actually, when I started my first company, after 3 years, I actually had to go see a psychologist. At the time, there wasn't coaches and there wasn't consultants that could help you become better leaders. Not like there is nowadays. Now there's a lot more resources like yourself. And
Right.
and
Mhm.
I went to see the psychologist because I said I'm treating my employees really bad and I feel really bad about it. And that no one told me it, but I recognized it in myself. I was too demanding, and and she helped me really well with that. It took a long time, 6 months, I think, but which is different with a coach. I think a coach can get to that leadership skill improvement so much faster.
Well, one of
Um,
the ways you do it,
as,
I
as
think, is it probably felt uncomfortable to you because the way you might have been treating people didn't connect to your internal values code,
No,
right? Which
it wasn't who I
is
wanted to
about
be. Yeah.
generosity. It's not who you wanted to be. And that's the same issue with leaders in nonprofits. There's a lot of stressors that come in a nonprofit world, right? And especially now in the time of COVID, when you've had to rethink, how you're going to gain followership and keep people interested, and everyone's paying attention to their very small worlds, in this little virtual box. So the first thing I do is say, well, what's important to you? You have to recraft a mission statement for where you are now. And that mission statement comes from identifying core values that are important to you. So yes, I come from I told you in our offline discussions, my mother was a Freudian psychoanalyst. So I always start with, I don't care why you behave the way you do, but here's the things that I think are going to help you pay attention to it and act differently. So to that end, what's a core value of yours? It's probably about collaboration or support. Clearly, what you do in your business right now. And if you're not communicating well with your employees, if you're being demanding, if you're working them and stressing them out, well, that doesn't flag with my core values. And so we craft a mission statement. I call it your how, right? Your purpose is your why you exist. Lots of organizations have them. A lot of leaders don't bother. They don't think about their why. Why do they lead? Where does that come from? But the how, well, that's a big part of the solution to behavior that feels uncomfortable. You have to articulate and identify what is core to who you are, and then show up that way. I mean, that's critically important. So, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of fantastic coaches who are also psychologists, and they do incredible assessments, and that's not my discipline. I think crafting a great mission statement. So, think about it. How many of the nonprofits you work with have a purpose or a mission statement emblazoned on their website? I'm curious. Do you like
Oh,
90%?
yeah. I don't, is it on their website? Um, I wouldn't
Maybe
say
it's something
it's,
that they use internally, right?
I think
For
it,
their
verbiage, the verbiage of, they'll say it throughout the website, but it's not
Right.
just like a one sentence thing, right?
Or if they've done that work as a team, they have a mission statement that drives their organization. But if you asked how many of them as individual leaders have a mission statement or a core value identification exercise that they've done for themselves, I would tell you that probably 70%, maybe 80, maybe even higher, do not. I mean, I've done
Yeah.
this in, 300 CEOs sitting in a room. Every single one raises the hand for their organization, and 3 raise their hand for themselves. So before you can know what stories you have to tell and how you want to show up as a leader, you have to do that journey of self-awareness, not just from the obstacle, but also, well, okay, positively, how do I want to show up? So the identification, and guess what? You know what comes out of those core values? Great stories, right? Like, so I had to learn to be a better supportive leader, because that was really important to me. So I had to go, that's a story that you've just shared. We've learned
Yeah.
something personal and authentic. And a lot of times I get, well, I couldn't tell that story out loud, because I wouldn't want my people to know it or the organization to know it. And the answer is, you don't tell a story in a vacuum. You also have to tell a
Yeah.
story that is going to empower your audience or impact your
Yeah.
audience and get them emotionally connected, so that they'll want to follow you, the leader, and be a part of. I mean, so many small nonprofits, and I've had this experience, I like to be a part of because I'm so drawn to the leader and what they're doing. Wouldn't you say that's true? Like, there's a charismatic leader with a great idea that I just want to be in their orbit and support them on their mission. So important.
Yeah, I do. I think it's changed a little bit. That that type of person was bigger in the '90s and a little. And I think what the trend has been over the last 5 years is genuine, honest,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Someone
Authentic,
who's
transparent, right?
authentic, right? And I think we can all do that. I mean, just be your. I mean, I think the key word is part of being a leader is being introspective, and
Yes.
you can't go to grow as a leader if you don't. know things about yourself. And and so like just for our listeners, I went on this path where I told you I first started going to see the psychologist to help me find out why I wasn't being a better leader with my team. And then like most things in my life, I dive into it and I start reading about leadership, and I start taking more some online not tests, but in online it's kind of like tests where it tells you what type of person
Assessments.
you are.
Sure. Yeah.
Assessments, that's it. And then I ended up hiring a coach, because finally that was a number of years later, and that was really, yeah, I forgot that was always, and I had the coach for 9 years, and now I would say is, it didn't take me that whole period of time, but I'm a much better leader, much more confident, and much more. Now I can tell when people want to follow me. I don't have to drag them along. They
Right.
do it because I'm genuine, and I state the purpose. I state why we're doing. I state why they might buy into it, and I know
Right.
my why. So
So
the message I
you've
wanted to
done
say.
that work, right? You've done the work on your why, and you know how you want to show up. Your purpose is your why. Why do you exist in the world as a leader? Your mission is your how. You now know, it's integrated to your core values. And by the way, everyone says, well, authenticity, we're all seeking that. And the answer is you have to go on that journey of self-awareness in order to be authentic. My mission in the work I do is to help leaders be who they are wherever they are in order to impact and change their audiences, ultimately, right? Storytelling is really just a component. It's a skill set that helps amplify who they are wherever they are so that they can be transparently themselves. But again, I have to say that there's a great, Frances Fry has just written a new book on leadership called Unleashed. She's a professor at Harvard, and I first encountered her because she was talking about customer service experiences. But she recently went to Uber to really rebuild trust in the organization, and I was so upset because I read this sentence and I thought, oh God, I wish I had written that, because she says leadership ultimately isn't about you; it's about how you empower others to do things.
Oh
And isn't
yeah,
I mean
yeah,
which I love
yeah,
that idea, because as an actor, I learned that it isn't about me, the actor. You'll hear actors say they are so generous, right? Do you hear that when they thank their co-stars for being great listeners, taking it in, giving me great reaction? And an actor learns early on, a good actor, that it's not about them; it's about the other actor. It's about reaching beyond the fourth wall to meet their audience's needs and take them on that journey. To do that work, that actor has to do a journey of self awareness, but then has to, and this is all in emotional intelligence, they have to do a journey of relational awareness, right? So it sounds like that's the work that you did in order to elevate your leadership. And guess what happens when you do that? People ask me, oh, how do I build my confidence? And does that just happen innately? And the answer is perhaps, right, with age and experience. But I think confidence isn't about knowing everything. It's about being okay with the uncertainty of everything, right? Like that's the leader that I want to be with, who doesn't have all the answers, but is curious and listens. And with that comes, guess what? It's generous. It's a really, like all of my leaders, I talk about your job is to show up with generosity towards those that you lead and serve. That ultimately
yeah.
will make people want to be in your orbit. Just the word itself is perfect for nonprofits, right? it's
Yeah, there were a number of books that through that journey that just really helped me. One of them was Now Discover Your Strengths, and it was done by the Gallup organization, by
yes,
which some of you might know because of the Gallup poll, but they're one of the most famous pollsters, so to speak. And what they did is they surveyed 15,000 executives and found out that as executives uh, become more successful, and as they get older, what they really learn is what they're good at and what they're not good at. And I
Right.
think that that humility, as you get older, because when you're younger, we all portray this idea that I don't want people to know what I'm weak at,
I
right?
like to say when
And
I
so
was younger, I knew everything and now I know nothing. And it's served me so
yeah,
much better.
until you have teenagers, and then you realize, you think they know everything, and you're like, wow,
Yes.
and then when you go into the covers and you really find out they're really scared, and
Yes.
they really don't know, they're just putting on a facade. And I think that carries on, and then over a period of time, you start to learn. So, that was an important book, which taught me that I didn't have to be good at everything, and I
Right.
wasn't ever going to be good at everything, and that humility allowed me to relate more to all different types of people, that we all struggle, of course.
Right.
And so,
Well, that's a great
so
story. By the way, I do work with a lot of organizations that use strength finders. And so when I ask the leaders in those organizations, because they're all working with their 5 top strengths, they all know each other's 5 top strengths. They talk about it. It's pretty fascinating. One of mine is woo. I love that. I don't
yeah,
remember what it means, but I love the word, right? But the idea is, that's great. You know what you're good at. I'm asking you to figure out what's important to you. Those are 2 different things, right?
uh,
And
uh,
they might be the same. They might be different. Like maybe you are what's important to you is to be a risk taker, but that shows up nowhere in your 5 top strengths. So I always am careful to say we've got to find a way, and this is true of organizations. So let's say an organization has identified their core values. That doesn't mean that the individuals there at every level shouldn't also identify their core values. Because somewhere in my organization, I might have a great adventurer who I'm not tapping into what's important to them. And I'm losing that, not that strength, but that desire, that aspiration, that's what's important to them. How can I meet their needs? So I think it's also important for leaders and organizations to recognize each other's values and strengths. It's just a nuanced difference. But I remember reading that book, Strength Finders, and that original book, I think it's Soar with Your Strengths is the name of the book. And I was like, this
now
is
your
brilliant.
strength.
I hated math, and I struggled and struggled with it. And I'm so glad I never have to do math again. So I'm saying
Yeah,
that to, a numbers guy, but I do think what you're talking about is you can learn all of this. If you can't bring in a consultant to do this work with you or a coach to do this work with you, I believe if you're willing, get a journal, start journaling, what are the core values that are important to me? Listen to this podcast or other podcasts and pay attention to, there is so much out there now around the kind of leader that we're all looking for, leaders who are authentic and transparent. But most important, start collecting the stories of your leadership that support your why or support your mission or support the organization's work. I do sometimes with boards of directors, I'll do a storytelling session with them because they're not sharing the story that brought them to the organization. We all have a reason that we would join an organization's board, correct? Like I really like their mission, or I like the leader, or I want to make a difference in my community. But there's got to be a story from your past that illuminates why you've picked this organization. What about its core mission is important to you personally? A board member that doesn't have that story well developed, we're losing an opportunity with them to be the best ambassador they can be for the organization in the world. So
mhm.
to me, that's why, it's not just the story of your organization. It's the story of what's important to your board member, how their why links to your organization's why, right? That's critically important to everybody from, the story. Like there was a great story. Can I share this about a hospital that was just having they were diving on their patient efficacy, patient, like literally the customer service wasn't working. And a lot of the money that they were getting comes from having good, patient engagement scores. So the doctor, the head of the hospital was like, what do I do? What do I do? And he finally was like, you know what? I know everybody who works here has a heart, everybody, and that they really care. They wouldn't work in this hospital system if they didn't. So let's start bringing our heart to work and sharing stories of how we bring our heart to work. And, as part of that, everybody started collecting them. And one day there was, an orderly who was, mopping the floor. And somebody came in and saw him sitting on a patient's bed. And the patient had been crying because they'd been waiting for their person to pick them up, and it was a long time, and he didn't want them to be alone. Rather than reprimanding him because that wasn't part of his job function, he was lauded for bringing his heart to work. It's a great story. It became apocryphal within the organization. Not only did patient engagement scores go up, but also the employee engagement. So consider how just a story of bringing your heart to work could make a difference for an organization. So I think you have to, yeah.
That guy who came up with the idea of bring your heart to work and have people tell their stories, that was a really good move.
Yeah.
Was it you?
No, I
Or did
wish.
the
I've been doing research on this for client. Listen, a lot of people, they want proof. Give me the proof point. Why is this important? I know how to tell a story, and getting them to understand that, look at that story. The same thing, by the way, KPMG, an accounting, a large accounting and consulting firm, and this was in, you can find this. There were articles about it. They did the same thing. Like, it was an anniversary of their, I don't know what anniversary. And they said, let's collect stories of great accountants doing great things, and who knew? They thought they'd get like 100 stories and it would be great and everybody could celebrate the anniversary of the founding of KPMG. They got 10,000 stories. Like, it was like an unbelievable number of stories. People are hungry to share their stories of connection. And as a result, I think their employee engagement, shot through the roof. It like went, and to get it to go up by 8 or 10 points is amazing, but it was like a remarkable result. So I do think that if you want to create a storytelling culture, don't forget that everybody's got a story of their connection to your organization. Get them to share it
Yeah,
out loud.
what made me think, it was a little bit earlier on in the discussion. It made me think that if you decided you say you want to bring on Pam as a consultant to help your organization with determining its mission, its why, helping you become a better leader, all these other things, that it would make sense to have everybody who's in a leadership position at the nonprofit be involved in this training, this consulting, because it's I do this a lot, and again, this is not a podcast about me. It's just an example.
Oh, you're a
Where
great
instead of me,
storyteller, Stephen.
well,
Tell me the story.
the, yeah, yeah. The story is that it's not very normal for me ever to tell somebody what to do.
Yes.
I often I just try to get them. I try to help them understand the why it should be done, and why they, first, why I should do, why it should be done, and why it's in their best interest too.
Right.
And then I don't have to. It's not something that I just do on purpose. It's just my style. But the reason why I bring this up is you get incredible buy-in when somebody feels that they came up with the idea, or that it matches their values. Anyway, when doing this leadership training with your executive board and the executive director, and if there's anybody else that's in a leadership position at your nonprofit, it gets everybody on the same page. It gets
Yes.
everybody talking. And then you come up maybe with a better mission statement, a better why, a better story. And let's face it, a lot of executive directors have their board out there trying to get donations. So they have to learn how to tell stories.
Yes.
And so if everybody's saying the same story and the message is consistent, it just
Yes.
reinforces the ability of success. So,
Well, and it's interesting. I work a lot with teams, and because you don't want it to happen in a vacuum, right? Yes, I sometimes I get asked to coach an individual CEO or leader within an organization, but they're not operating alone. Like, in a soundproof booth, they're operating in an organization, in a community. And so, for example, one team, it was a leadership team taking over. We did the work on purpose. Why does this place exist, with the founders, and we articulated it. And then we did the work on mission. What are our values and how do we articulate that? And they had they've been around for a long time, but then you got to do grassroots within the organization and go. It can't just come from on high. This is our new mission statement, right? You got to get buy-in from everybody so that they see it too, and they feel like they're part of the discussion. And most nonprofits, people who are working in the nonprofit world, are invariably mission driven, right? But having them, they still got to do the work every day. And that's why, by the way, I just want to say, I don't call this training. I call it illumination or amplification or coaching or consulting, because you cannot, I don't think it's like step one, do this, step two, do that. Every organization, it's not cookie cutter. Every organization is different. Every leader is different. And every issue that they've got, it's just, they've got to be aware that we've got to include all of our constituents. I call them audiences, but all of our constituents, in order to ensure that that we're meeting our mission and we are amplifying our presence in the world in the most positive way. I think that's the way to do it. So I do agree with you. Having an executive team that builds trust. I'm actually on a board. Don't tell anybody, because it's. But I love the organization, and I'm going to lead as a board member a vision exercise for the board. Now, the strategic vision has to come from the staff that works it. But wouldn't the staff love to hear what are the big, hairy, audacious goals that the board has for the organization? Wouldn't that better inform their strategic plan, to know that these people who are giving their time and treasure to the organization also have a vision of the organization? And if it's wildly different, they should know that too. So we're going to go through that exercise in June, and I'm really excited about it because I'll get to do the vision workshop, which is, stories from the past that illuminate. It's a storytelling workshop, but a stories of the future, right? Like what's our big dream? And we're doing that with the board so that it can help the staff know, okay, these people are sitting here now in this time. How can this help you come up with a strategic plan for the organization?
Yeah, the best organizations I have ever seen, nonprofits or businesses, or sports teams,
Yes.
are organizations that um, have done all of that great work of understanding their mission, understanding their why, understanding their culture. They do all that. Then they uh, actually hire people into
Yes.
that meet that. And then, this, you made me think of this, Pam, and that is, then they have it posted everywhere in the organization about their mission, their why, their culture, and all those things, and their measurements. And then, if you asked an employee what their mission is, they will know it. And I can tell you, like, this accounting firm that I know was unbelievable at it.
Yeah.
This other company that I knew, which is a places registered nurses, um, unbelievable at it. And then there's two other nonprofits that are our clients that are amazing at communicating it. It's all over the place. It's on their website. It's when you walk in the door. It's when you talk to them, and it's about incredible execution. And honestly, the opposite is true too. When I've seen poor organization,
Yes.
right, it's the person running it, and then everybody is running around scared
Right.
and doesn't know what's going on, whereas the one person does, and everybody else is just trying to kind of get through their day, you
So the
know?
behavior has to match. Those are just words unless it's lived. And that, I think, is a perfect way to talk about this. The story you just told are stories of organizations that recognize that leadership is behavior, not just words. Leadership
Yeah.
is action, and that's true for everyone in the organization. And so, those organizations that can tell the story of their behavior, of their mission lived, are the organizations that are the most successful in their space. There's no question.
Yeah.
So I
So,
love that. It's so two autodidacts on leadership, waxing eloquent on stories that have moved us to make a difference for other leaders. I can't think of a better way to to spend an hour talking about something that I love to do. So making a difference for others ultimately.
yeah. And in summary of just we're out of time, and just to kind of summarize what I think Pam and my experience has been too, is that leadership skills, if it's something that you really want to get better at, you can do it. It just, you keep pecking away at it. Believe me, it happens faster than you think. It's certainly a lifelong journey. And I think we talked about, the idea of autodidact itself. It's not, we say self-taught, of course, but having coaches, reading books, paying attention, doing the work on yourself, is something that results in success. And I think, it was great, Pam, having you on today. So thanks so much for coming on today's podcast, and
Thank you.
good stuff. And for our listeners, if you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. If you liked today's podcast, please give us a review on your podcasting app and help get us the word out. The Nonprofit MBA podcast has become very, very popular. We're getting thousands of listeners, and the content that we're providing, that we're hearing from our guests, is just fantastic. And Pam was a good example of it today. So if your organization is looking for a line of credit, which I highly recommend, it doesn't cost anything to set it up. It makes perfect sense. Our clients use it sometimes a lot, sometimes none, and they just have it there as a cash backup plan. It's better than going to a donor asking for the extra money. It's mostly, our line of credit is mostly used for when payroll is coming up and there's a shortage of cash, or an important program has to be run. It's all really important stuff. You can give us a call at 862-207-4118, or visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Pam, if someone's wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
They can find me on my website, which is www.thepamsherman.com. That's thepamsherman.com, and all the information necessary to get in touch with me is there. They can also find me on every social media outlet at the Pam Sherman. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, because we actually do put out content about this every week, including what I call the Outlaw Leadership column. So I'm thrilled to have spent this hour with you and with your audience. So thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on board. And I want to thank all of our listeners out there. You all are doing the heavy lifting of making the world a better place. We all have to do our part, of course. I'm trying to be the best person I can be to the world, and make a difference. I know Pam is doing the same thing. And we just want to say thank you for running your mission critical organization. The world definitely needs it. Everybody, the summer's coming around. Have a fantastic, fantastic day. And everyone, please stay safe.